Yeah, like looking at like I mean that's my perspective on Bob Lazar. You know, Bob Lazar has been telling the exact same story forever. I've had many conversations with Bob. I've had dinner with him. I've hung out with him a few times. I've dinner with him several times. I've hung out with him in the studio. He showed us that most recent documentary before it was released with Luigi, the guy who made it with him. I don't, you know, I know a lot of people that are full of shit. I meet a lot of people that are full of shit. I've had people sit here in front of me, and then somewhere in the conversation, I'm like, oh, this person's not being honest. This is some. They've got an agenda. They're pushing something, or they're pretending they know some things because it sounds good, but they don't really know some things. I get real suspicious of people. I'm not suspicious of him. It's weird. You know, he's obviously incredibly intelligent and very well studied when it comes to science, when it comes to, you know, whatever it is, whether it's elements, particles, when, you know, he understands what he's talking about in a very deep way. And when he's explaining these experiences, when he talks about this craft and his experiences at S4, he seems to be telling the truth. And then, since then, we know, first of all, that no one knew about S4 back then. But he did. He knew where it was. He knew exactly where it was. And he knew about the flights that take people out there. He had a total understanding of Los Alamos Labs. I mean, he went there. He knew the people that worked there. He knew how to get around the building. When George Knapp took him there, he knew everything about the facility. Yet they claimed that he never worked there. And then they found him on the employee roster. So he did work there.
Yeah,
so they lied and they tried to cover up. Why would they lie and say that he didn't work there?
Yeah.
Well, probably because he was involved in some shit that they wanted to keep secret.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a lot of weirdness to the Bob Lazar story. And then when you see some of the footage that was released, particularly after the New York Times story of 2017, the footage that's released mirrors the way he describes this craft operating.
Yeah.
And so would he guess correctly in 1989?
Those are all good points. So, yeah, I told you last time I was on here that Tyler, right, in my American Cosmic book, told me that he was the real deal. Even though I had people who, you know, Eric Davis, and, you know, telling me, no, Diana, this guy's, no. I believe Tyler. So everything that you say, I agree with. Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
you're always going to have people, when you have a fantastic story like Bob Lazar's story, you're always going to have people that want to say that the guy's full of shit, that there's something wrong, he's lying, it's not true, it's fake.
But I mean, Eric Davis would be a person who might know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's a physicist who studies this and even briefs Congress on. But no, so I don't know. I tend to, when Tyler tells me things, and now that everything he said kind of has come true, I believe him. You know, I believe that is true.
But if Bob Lazar is telling the truth, it's so disturbing, the idea that there's a group of humans that operate in our government that have information that the general public does not have, and that they're the gatekeepers of this information, and they've determined for whatever reason that either it's not wise to tell people or it wouldn't benefit them to tell people, like whatever it is. I think it's a crime against humanity. I think if you're a person that knows for a fact that there's something here other than us, that either visits us or exists amongst us or travels here from another dimension, I think you have an obligation to tell people.
But what if it's not that? What if it's actually something we've created and we don't want anybody to know about it, and Lazar happened to find out, and that's why we don't want, you know, I mean, think about it from the perspective of people who are trying to keep Americans safe. So just to push back a bit.
Okay, go ahead.
You know, what if that's it?
So if that's the case, why would they bring a guy in to tell them, how does this work? Show us how this works. Because that was his job.
Oh, yeah.
They brought him in and said, tell us how this works. And and he was like, well, what are you talking about? This is ours. It has an American flag sticker on it. Like, don't you know how it works? Why are you asking me how it works? This seems kind of crazy. That's not what you do if you have super advanced technology. What you do is you bring in people to improve it and make it better. You don't bring in people and say, how does it work?
Yeah. Okay, wait, I have a couple of comments about that.
Okay.
So when I first started, I was aware that people, I wasn't aware as much as I should be, but I was aware that people in my position, you know, who were basically just doing like academic work on the UFO belief, the rising UFO belief, might have people come and give me disinformation.
100%.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I have the same situation.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to be that you're talking about discernment. Like we have to be
Yeah.
super discerning about who's, you know, our BS meter has to like be really well working or working well. Okay. So, but the person who took me out to the desert, right, with Gary during that time to an alleged crash site, which, you know, Jacques then goes out there. He basically also wants Gary to figure out this debris. And so I'm thinking, we obviously don't know what we have here if it's so legit. It could, okay, so here are my comments about what you just told me about Lazar. Either they're setting up this situation where they're going to have someone like me and Gary who are like, they're trying to back engineer this, right? And we're saying that publicly without any kind of like knowledge that it could be disinfo. And then they have Lazar who we're going to plant. Then they do this like with Benovitz and stuff. They plant stuff for.
Benovitz?
Yeah, you know, Benovitz, the guy who. He had stuff planted in his computer. Do you not know about him?
No. What is
Oh,
the story?
it's called Project Beta. This is a book a friend of mine wrote about. I can't remember. Yeah. So.
Paul Benovitz.
Yeah.
I've heard his name before.
Yeah, you should read this because this is a disinfo scam on this poor guy who.
So Benovitz believed that he had intercepted communications from alien spacecraft and discovered a secret underground facility called Dulce Base. Dulce Base?
Dolce.
Dulce? Is that how you say it?
I'd say Dolce, but.
Dulce. A base managed by aliens in cooperation with the U.S. government. His claims appeared in the popular press in the early 1980s. According to some sources, Benovitz was the target of a government disinformation campaign that ultimately led to his psychiatric hospitalization. Author Greg Valdez proposes that Benovitz was targeted for his investigation of cattle mutilations. Valdez argues the mutilations were a government testing program looking at the after effects of radiation from 1967's Project Gas Buggy, in which an underground atomic device was detonated just 21 miles southwest of Dulce. They were testing the cattle to avoid panicking the public.
Okay, so this.
The problem with that story is the cattle mutilations
Well, wait a
still
minute.
go on.
This is like completely not accurate.
This is just a brief Wikipedia about it. There's probably way more to the story. And
Yeah. So
What's
you know
not accurate
Doty?
about it?
Yeah, Doty. You know Doty, right? The guy who went. They placed misinformation on his computer so that he believed that he was.
They placed it on his
Yeah,
computer?
they placed it on his computer.
How
It was
so?
Really, they went into his house when he wasn't there and put it on there.
And what did they put on his computer?
They put on all this information about. Like that he was in touch with these aliens. So they basically cultivated his belief that he was in touch with aliens. They did that purposefully. And Doty, Doty's first name, oh gosh, I can't
Ed
remember.
Doty?
No. He's really famous within ufology because
Right.
he's a misinfo guy. So, but back
He's
to...
a misinfo guy.
Yeah,
like
so
purposefully.
intentionally placing misinformation out into the public about UFOs, which is a thing.
Is he still
happens.
alive?
Yeah, he's still alive.
And that's what he does for sure?
He used to.
Richard
Yeah,
Doty.
Richard Doty. Yeah, he for sure does that.
How do you know he does that?
What do you mean?
What do you
Everybody.
mean? What do you mean?
That I'm surprised you don't know that
Well,
he does
I'm
this.
speaking sometimes when I talk. I'm speaking
Oh.
for the entire public that
Oh.
probably doesn't know what we're talking
okay,
about.
yeah,
and I
right,
think it's
right,
probably
yeah.
good that we fill them in.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so Richard Doty has come out and said this is what he does. And I know people who know him, like the entire group in, the Invisible College people with Hal, and they all know who he is.
Okay.
And Kit offered to introduce him to me, by the way, Kit Green. So,
Mm-hmm.
and by the way, all of these people are people who work on used to work on the program ATIP and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
to study UFOs. But my point, though, here in talking about this was, what if Lazar was a person like me and Gary, who was being given information? We're credible, right? He's not so credible, but like, you know, he's this person that's been given information and placed out there so that, and he's just on the edge of credibility, just so, you know, he's credible, but then he's not credible, so that he could be taken down if necessary. That's how they get this information out there. Now, who am I talking about? They. So what I'm trying to say is that what I've observed is that the government isn't unified in this whole UFO thing. They're fighting against each other. I try to stay out of their crosshairs, frankly. What they're doing, though, is that every time somebody comes out and says, you know, here are the new UFO files, I'm studying them and so forth, then they get taken out by like counterintelligence. So it's like intelligence and counterintelligence, so that it's really confusing. The end result is total confusion, and you really have to have an ability like to understand, like your discernment has to be well developed.
Right. So I believe that. I believe that there is disinformation and deception. I think that's a great strategy if you want to make something look ridiculous. You take truth and then you attach a bunch of fantastic, ridiculous claims to that truth. And so that it dismisses all of it, right? Because it's all in the same category. And it's all easily debunked. Like, oh, this is the same guy that also said that, so this is nonsense, right?
That's exactly right. Tyler used to say, we hide truth in a circle of confusion.
Yeah.